Yeah, 32 sounds old until you get there, and you start to. It's really what it is you start to realize like, oh, life is like longer than like than maybe like you could wrap your head around when you're 20. Cause like I feel like the mid 20s are like early 20s. You're kind of just like you might as well be a 16-year-old, you know.
Yeah.
Mid 20s, you're like. You want to start to act like you know everything, but then like once you get out of your 20s, you're just like, dang, okay, I'm still here. Like,
got a long way to go.
I still got a long way to go, so maybe I should chill out. Maybe I should just kind of calm down.
Do you guys have any kids? Are you married? You're
both
married.
We're both married. I have a 15-month-old. His name's George.
Congrats,
Georgie.
That's awesome.
Georgie. Yeah.
Beautiful.
Yeah, I've got 2, so almost 3-year-old, and my second will be 1 at the end of this month. So we got JoJo and Judah. Those are my 2 boys.
Amazing. Strong names.
The sweetness on this is sick.
Yeah, y'all.
Thank you.
Y'all snapped. It's good stuff.
He's got a newborn.
Congrats.
Little Jude.
Like super newborn.
Super newborn.
Like 2 months?
8 weeks tomorrow.
Yeah.
What you doing here?
My wife is asking the same question for you.
Podding out with
Dude
the
loves
bros.
the pod.
Oh, so you coming in. See, those are the things. Right?
You have multiple, right?
Yeah, I got 2.
Oh,
old is
nice.
Yep. I got a 2.5-year-old. She'll be 3 in December. And then a newborn as well. So she's 2 girls, Giselle and Phoebe. And
Talk about some names.
Gigi and Phoebe.
Giselle and Phoebe. Yeah, it took me a second to process that.
Giselle, baby. But yeah, Phoebe's like 3 months old-ish.
Nice.
And then you got one on the way.
Yeah.
Goofing.
Late to the game again. Sorry, guys.
No, that's early.
I know. 25.
Very early to
yeah.
the game.
So
wait, well, you said old, but I'm like, we might as well be the same age. You guys.
Well, yeah, like you're talking about age. I feel like so much of that has to do with 1, owning a business, and 2, having kids.
Oh, yeah.
Like
the
it'll
business
age you.
thing takes like 10 years off your life.
Oh,
Yeah.
well said.
I can tell my face.
Like permanent bags under the eyes.
Yeah, I have more wrinkles than my wife. Like she's probably gone through more stress than I have in the past 5 years. But anyways,
Have you guys
Yeah.
ever played the game of life? You know, like the board game?
Not since I was a kid.
Well, when you start, you can like go the extra like 20 steps route to go to college, or you can go to start career, and you just kind of like go like that. I feel like that's what we did. We just
yeah.
Yeah, because y'all were like,
18 and 19 when we started Valor.
Yeah.
So
Oh, nice.
yeah, it was a jump for
So
sure.
y'all didn't go to college?
We all quit. Ethan got an associate's degree.
I was able to
Yeah.
cash out my credits for an associate's.
He always
in
makes sure
journalism.
we remember he got an
Oh, yeah, you
associate's
got to.
degree.
Then I'm the
Got
college
right?
grad.
It's that,
yeah,
it's that,
yeah,
with the
yeah.
2
I'm
year.
a college grad.
it's that internal like I gotta justify the time I spent.
Yeah.
I
yeah,
get that.
I'm the brains of the organization.
Right.
I get that.
That's a big cup.
Was that like a pho?
It is like a pho. Like you get
Looks
pho
like
to
it was
go.
made for pho.
I think.
That's another power move at the table.
Yeah, like
Yeah. So
All
what's
right,
up,
dog.
guys?
Yeah, come on,
Okay, you got the
Yeah.
biggest cup. All right.
yeah,
chill
the-
out.
That associate's
Biggest
degree, of the
cup.
big, you get the big cup.
Can you see my chip on my shoulder from here, or is
Oh,
it
yeah.
just was it just me?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
but
well,
you're not like Anthony Davis, right? Like that chip's not gonna keep you from playing.
oh
is it?
no.
Okay.
I gotta play.
Yeah.
I gotta play.
We're
ball.
not on contract was.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool.
No, I have an affinity with. I think we all have like a slight affinity with restaurant culture, and this is what people in kitchens drink, the delis, and I'm fond of that. I also just finished the
Bear?
The Bear,
Nice.
and I really enjoyed that show.
What's the bear?
You would love it, man.
Really?
Yeah, it's a little 8-part. I feel like it's probably done. They're probably not going to make another one. Just like a little slice of life about a restaurant. Like a guy comes in and takes over his recently deceased brother's restaurant, and it's chaos. But it's like from the culinary people I've talked to, it's the most like accurate depiction of what it's like to work in a kitchen. And he's like a Michelin star chef trying to do like Italian beef sandwiches in Chicago.
Yeah.
So I think you'd love it. It's
Hulu?
pretty.
Is it Hulu?
It's Hulu. Have you guys watched it?
He's a big fan.
It's
Yeah,
pretty.
You watched it?
No.
Oh yeah, I watched it. Yeah, it was sick.
I would say it's pretty intense. Like there's some like the verbal language is probably some of the most intense I've heard because it's like
Like they say cuss words.
yeah, they're saying F S B
Crap.
D
Wow.
H yeah crap shoot. Do you have any thoughts on it you want to share?
Aaron, I'm just gonna get you to pull your mic closer.
Closer. Yeah.
Just
that.
eat it a little more. Perfect.
There you go.
Thoughts. The seventh episode was sick. The one where it was just like a one shot all the way through.
Yeah,
I'll agree. The language was terse.
to say the least.
Terse.
Yeah, terse. Yeah.
I love that. I love that word.
But yeah. B plus, solid show. What am
awesome.
I watching right now?
Yeah,
Did you watch? Are you watching Abbott Elementary? Y'all watch
Yeah,
it?
yeah.
This week's episode was fire. You watched that show?
No.
It was. You watched the Shark Tank episode?
Yeah.
I've heard good
That was
things.
nuts. Yeah, it's good.
You guys watch Rings of Power?
I have a hard time with fantasy stuff. I
Same,
never
bro.
did Game of Thrones.
Yeah.
In fact, fun fact about Portrait: no one at Portrait is watching the new one.
That is a fun fact.
Is
So
it-
we
anyone-
walked into work on
It
the
is.
Monday after the what's it called? House of Dragons?
Yeah,
Or is it House of Dragon?
it's something.
Casa de
the
Dragon.
dragons,
Yeah.
whatever.
And we walked in and I was like, I feel so happy I work in a place where we don't have to talk about this show.
That's safe
Yeah.
space.
Yeah.
That's hilarious.
Safe space.
No,
That's fine.
um,
But I have to act like I like it.
It's
I
just
haven't-
the same story, like
That's what I
repurposed.
heard.
Yeah. I was a big Game of Thrones fan. Loved it. And haven't got to Rings of Power yet. I've heard a lot. The big budget.
huge.
It
budget.
seems like it was an accomplishment to get it done. Lots of money spent on the rights and things.
Yeah.
Producing a lot of content right now. And the producer I'm working with, like every day, he's talking about that show. So I think I'm watching it through him.
Yeah, it seems like a feat. It for me, it has not lived up, but it's slated for like 5 seasons. So I'm just interested to see if they can
Yeah, keep it going.
turn the ship, maybe like hone in. Because I watch it with one of my buddies who's like a straight nerd.
Yeah.
and like read all like the extracurriculars of Lord of the Rings, and so he knows what's in it, not in it, right and not right. And
I'm sitting right here, bro. You don't have to talk.
yeah,
about me
what's up,
like
nerd?
Yeah, he's at me, bro.
That's you?
No.
okay.
No,
Shout out Matthew.
I feel that. I mean, I like fantasy. It's kind of tough with like. I think I'm always the only person in my friend groups who likes it though. Like I can't. I think
You
when I
keep
was
it to
watching
yourself.
Game of Thrones, like I had to do it by myself. Couldn't really get too much into Lord of the Rings because of the time.
Yeah.
And that's a lot of time to spend by yourself. But
And it's gonna be by yourself. for
It will
sure.
be. Oh, yeah.
Like my wife, there is no talking her into sitting down with me for
She-
Lord of the Rings.
My wife joined and
Oh, okay.
left.
Oh, you left. Okay.
same. That's
She
how it
probably-
was with. That's how it was with. Yeah, those things I can't get her to do it, and the other one, the one we were just talking about that I can't remember right now. Game of Thrones.
Game of Thrones, jumped in, jumped out, kind of thing.
She was like, "Nah, I'm good."
yeah.
I was like, "Cool."
We'll spend my time in other ways.
We can get married after this
Yeah,
because
there
I
we
gotta do this. So.
Well, for our listeners, today we are joined by Aaron and Marcus from Portrait Coffee.
Standing ovation.
That was for
wow.
you.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That was nice. Nice.
Yeah, you're welcome.
We're so happy to have you guys. Thanks for making the trek up this way, and I'm sure the heat of traffic this morning.
Happy to be here.
Yeah, we're happy to have you.
Yeah.
So, first of all, how do you guys know each other? How'd you meet?
You want to tell a story?
Church.
Church.
I think Aaron came up to me and was like, "I like your shoes," and we've been friends ever since.
What shoes were you wearing? You remember?
They're Air Jordan 2s Lows, Chicago colorway.
Wow.
Liked them so much, I bought a pair myself.
Wow.
Oh,
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you
They're-
feel like, were you upset that he bought the exact same pair, or?
Even
No.
just a little.
Not really. I mean, it's a compliment. I had this. It's a compliment. I mean, I'm pretty into style and stuff like that, and so when I had it happen a week ago, I wore some shoes, and then the next time I saw the person, he had the same shoes on yesterday, and I was
Wait,
like,
I think I lied though. I think
It was Jordan 1 lows.
Yeah, I was about to say.
I
Actually,
didn't
they
get
were
the
ones.
twos until we lived together.
Yeah.
Jordan 1 low Chicago. So.
Dang.
Well, I'm gonna do the same thing to your shirt. So next
Honestly.
time you see me,
Nah, do it, man. I don't like gatekeeping. I don't like hoarding. So, you know, it's like just pass it on through. You know, we all saw it first somewhere, right?
yeah,
Mhm.
true.
You can always make your own clothes if you want the one-offs.
He does. Fun fact.
Come on.
Yep.
I'm gonna get some fun facts in today.
Yeah, that's just
One.
two.
Wait,
Yeah,
that's
two.
Yeah, that's
Two.
two.
Well, I
It's,
said-
that's gonna be the everybody get a drink every
Yeah.
time Aaron
Take a
slides
swig,
slides a fun
wash
fact.
Ethiopian.
All right.
That's funny.
So you guys met at church, and then did I hear you guys eventually lived together? At some
Yeah.
point?
I was
Cool.
like your shoes, we should live together. So
By the way,
Pretty much.
can I live with you?
It was love at first sight.
yeah. So actually, I was working at a coffee company at the time, around the corner from here, and I was looking to move down to the city. We lived, or the church we went to was in Southwest Atlanta, and so I wanted to move into that neighborhood. My now wife lived down there too, so I was just trying to simplify my life a little bit. So Marcus and I became roommates with another friend, Shane. And that was like, what, back in 2016, 2017?
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, yeah,
Wow.
been best friends ever since.
Come on.
Yes, sir.
Cool.
Beautiful thing.
Where was Portrait in your head by 2016? Are you thinking about it?
Yeah,
Had
that's
it, had
yeah.
it launched?
So it was interesting. So a lot of times driving through Southwest Atlanta, whether it was in the car with Marcus or riding around with my wife, I'd always be like looking at these like semi-abandoned car garages or like, you know, these slightly renovated buildings and being like, dang, I'm gonna be so pissed if someone opens a coffee shop in this neighborhood that doesn't reflect the history or culture of the neighborhood. But then it would just be like a period and I'd move on with my day, you know? And so when we were roommates, I went to East Africa on an origin trip with the company I was working with before. And that was a moment for me where I was like, oh, I might actually really be interested in doing something in coffee.
Yeah.
Whoa. What changed when you were on that trip? Like, what about it kind of gripped you?
It was the lack of accountability for the trip. So essentially going on the trip, I felt like there was an expectation of the work being done in those producing communities. And while I was on that trip, it didn't meet my expectation of how producers, farmers, you know, stakeholders should be cared for. And it kind of pissed me off.
Sure. Yeah,
So,
yeah.
But it was cool living and talking with Marcus. Marcus was there when I came home.
Yeah.
So I don't know. You could talk.
Yeah, I was
from
going to
your
ask what it was like to be kind of his soundboard, I guess, as he's grappling with all this.
No, I mean it resonated because I actually had just come back from Africa too.
Oh, no way.
Yeah.
What were you doing out there?
Healing from a breakup.
Ooh.
So I actually went to Cape Town, and I had a pretty. So they still got these things called townships down there, where the way that it's organized is, you know, like the white people live, like the Dutch, you know, live pretty good lives. You know, got the social mobility, and then they have this people group called colored, which is basically like they look mixed, but they're like light-skinned black people. I think they're mixed, but they call them colored, and they're a whole different people group. And then you have the black people. And so the colored people live in a part of Cape Town. And then, I mean, you know, apartheid is like the backdrop of all of this, but it still kind of runs. And then all the like black people kind of live in what's called like townships, which are like these government organized ghettos. And probably one of the biggest moments of that trip for me was I was at one of the townships. So my Airbnb host, her friend, they're in a band together, does these tours. And she's like, hey, I can hook you up with this tour if you do photography for her to kind of like help out her business. Long story short, I go, I'm in the middle of this place, and they're just looking at me like, welcome home. And I just start crying. So anyway, I come back, and he had just had his Africa experience. I had mine. So it was kind of like, you know, we were hanging up these pictures. Like our dining room had pictures of like people from where'd you go to? Rwanda and Cape Town. So it's kind of like this. Kendrick Lamar had recently put out "To Pimp a Butterfly," and like that was our house. Like it was the TPAB house.
I'm sure that really brought y'all together a lot.
Yeah, so it was. I mean, so we kind of were like on this similar journey, and coffee was never really like that. I didn't really know about it, but then he moved in and he had this whole setup.
Brought your gear.
Brought my gear, but yeah, my gear.
Yeah.
But the Baratza Encore.
Oh yeah,
V60.
It was like a thing. It was like a whole thing.
Yeah.
And I just appreciated how his energy was just like, yo, respect my space. And I'm like, I'm a fan.
Like, hey, the rest of the kitchen's yours, but
It was
never.
I brought a metal table.
Yeah, it was like a metal table,
like
and
a
everything.
Restaurant Depot table.
You did. Come
And
on.
like-
And it had all my stuff. I forgot.
It's your slow bar.
Yeah,
Yeah.
slow bar, baby. Yeah,
Respect
that
the
was the
slow
word
bar.
for it.
Yeah. And so it wasn't like he was like, yo, don't mess with my stuff, but you could just tell. I was like, okay, like that's his thing. And I think we had a guest come over one time, and he was like, oh, I know how to make a pour over, and he just like, I was like, all right. And
Tense
he just
up.
like totally messed it up, and Aaron got so mad. But
bro.
anyway, like I think it was just really cool hearing his story and like hearing this thing that he was passionate about. And so fast forward a little bit, he was like, I mean, it was just kind of like the ground seedbed of friendship. I'm like, oh, you're like serious about something. I can dig that.
Yeah.
And then one day he's like, yo, I think I want to start a coffee company. And by this time, I'm like, all right, like, you know, you're a pretty responsible dude. Like you have a perspective, like you're responsible, all that good stuff. So I told him, I was like, you should do that 100%. And I mean, kind of like the rest is, you know, he invited me and another one of our good friends to be a part of it. And it was just kind of cool. Like, it's kind of cool to watch, be kind of have a front row seat to it all. I guess I could say. It's what it feels like.
We've been talking a lot about the producing side of coffee and matcha too. Like last week we had?
No, 2 weeks
2
ago.
weeks ago we had Lauren from Mizuba Matcha. They're up in Portland. But she was talking about like the producing side of matcha, and then we also had Unblended, those guys on. But you guys know them, right? Yeah. They were talking about the producing stuff. About your trip to Rwanda, like the things that kind of woke you up, the things that you saw that moved you. Can you just be more specific about that? Like, what about that trip was, grinding your gears?
Yeah, I always gotta just, I just have to talk with a little bit of trepidation, but
Sure.
Yeah. And hey, we never said this, but now we're in the podcast. But anything you say, if you don't, we can just take it out later. So,
no, it's all good. It's just the reality of like it was. I mean, it was super wonky on a couple levels because I came home. I told Marcus it was my first time being in an environment where I had the same color skin as someone, but they did not identify me as the same. So I was othered because I was walking into their environment, and I could pick up on the vibe that this wasn't a mutually beneficial relationship for me, like walking into their space. And it's like, it's their land, it's their process. And it was so beautiful to see. And this wasn't the energy I got the entire time, but I could tell that I was other. And so that really shook me up of being like, oh man, like this is not what I signed up for. You know, like I thought this was partnership, and it's like I don't get to make that decision, or I don't get to establish that relationship. But it was really shocking or jarring to be like, oh, like, well, we advertise this, we say this, we say we're doing all this stuff, but like now I'm here and there's not warmth in the room, and like why is that? So that was something like I wrestled with for a while, in being like a participant in that company. Like whatever was happening wasn't aligning with what I was seeing.
Yeah.
And so I just had to kind of like sit with that conviction. And then just like more practically, this was some years ago now. I think we're a little bit out of like the do good marketing culture of like hey, like we travel 3,000 miles and here's all the cool stuff we do.
Yeah.
I think we're a little post that.
Yeah.
But that was definitely, yeah, good job,
Thank God.
everybody. But that was a little bit of the energy of like, oh, like here's all this stuff we're doing, but there's no accountability, right? Because how many of us are actually hopping on a plane going whatever 3,000 miles to actually make sure the work's getting done? Mm-hmm. So that was a huge part of it too, where it was like, I don't know if we're actually doing all the stuff we're saying we're doing.
Yeah.
So yeah.
Sure, that was wild. I'm sure
Yeah.
you felt a lot of things, man.
Yeah, I did. So yeah, I mean, honestly, between that trip and that time and between us, it was probably like May of 2019 when we for real were like, let's start working on a business plan and a strategy with Portrait. I mean, so it was 2 years that I just kind of like sat and processed that. And I actually like during that time I left coffee. I went and worked in hospitality adjacent jobs.
I remember.
Got us an account.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thanks for that,
We're
bro.
gonna bring it
Yeah.
up. Thank you. Thank you.
Yeah.
I thought I recognized that branding.
yeah.
Word.
Well, what you're saying reminds me of the start of our business. There's a lot of non-commonalities, but one way it's kind of similar to how we started was simply just us like working in cafes and being like, we can do this better. Like, we're 19, but I know we can do this better.
Right.
And, it was a lot less of a complex situation than you were in. We were just working in cafes, but like we had this passion for coffee and hospitality and, company culture, treating people well. And the places we worked just weren't matching up with our internal vision for that, I guess. But it's just like, I feel like that's such a common thing when anyone starts anything is they're like, there's something wrong in the world and surely I can do it better.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Does that kind of describe the start of Portrait a little bit or no?
Yeah. I mean, I think that's just on that comment alone. I mean, I think that's so many things, especially now today's culture. We might be post do good marketing. I think we might be kind of becoming post outrage, where people kind of just complain about things or just like verbalize what they're upset about.
Yeah.
And sometimes that's justified. I don't mean to be anti emotion, but I think that's really insightful, to say, hey, like, I think a friend of mine said it one time, like the way you beat the bad is by practicing the better.
Yeah.
So on some level, it was kind of, it felt like it was a solution to a problem. That's what drew me in. I didn't know anything about the coffee world, but it was like you found a problem worth solving. Okay, let's work out the solution. That's like half of it, right?
Mm-hmm.
So.
And just adding to that, I think what's Marcus runs our marketing and has really helped be the architect of our brand. And something he's so good at doing is keeping us consistent on solving that problem. And that's what I appreciate about y'all's brand and y'all's company too, is like from day one, y'all have been really consistent about offering a really awesome product and genuine hospitality, which I really appreciate. So
It kind of, I mean, too, it's almost like a comment on, as an outsider coming into specialty coffee. I feel like that's something I really appreciate. The more I meet specialty coffee entrepreneurs, the more I'm a fan, because it's like so many of the people who are doing it well. And from my perspective, there are a lot of people who are methodical.
Yeah.
You guys, so many others. It's almost like they're just solving problems for different groups of people within this space, right? From the minute you look at the brand, the font, I'm like, oh, it matches the guys. Like, right, there's this communication kind of already going on, and I'm like, oh, I kind of get a sense of who this is for,
Yeah.
So that's, I mean, shout out to y'all.
That's
shout
sweet.
out to the
Thanks,
space,
man.
really.
Thank you.
Thank you. I think it's cool too that you're saying you took that trip to Rwanda and you were driving around your neighborhood in Southwest Atlanta and you're getting these like promptings, and it was something that it wasn't like rash of like, oh, I need to solve this right now. Let's just like drop everything. But it says something to how sustained this journey could probably be for you, because it didn't leave you for 2 years. You know, I think it says something about like how important that like sat deep within you, that I'm sure in your other jobs, you probably weren't trying to avoid it or anything, but it's like, this is something that cannot be avoided for you. I think that speaks to the depth of why you guys got started and how you're still continuing to prosper, which is really cool. Not like, because in our industry, I'm sure we come across it a lot, but it's not like the hardest thing in the world to start a coffee company or a coffee shop, and someone who has some like extra liquid could just be like, oh, I'm going to do this now. But especially for guys that are a little younger, it's like it's a huge dedication of life and opportunity. So respect that.
No, I appreciate what you said, and too, just from like the perspective of someone who might have some extra liquid and wants to invest and open a cafe, which is like what a lot of people do. Mm-hmm. It's like, I mean, that's pretty bad investment long term. Like,
I know, man.
Like you should have studied it a little more.
Fun fact. We gotta.
Oh yeah, that's a
that
bad
was
idea.
a fun fact. Yeah, it's like. I mean, you're gonna be breaking your back to like make a 5, maybe 10% return. Like,
To all the listeners out there, listen to Aaron. Yeah. If you got money, just run.
Yeah, just run.
Run from the coffee industry.
Yeah, please.
Oh my gosh, that's fair. Well, you got something?
No.
I just feel like Riley's the guy that keeps us on track. You know what I mean? So
Just
whenever
like
when there's a point, I'm just like, Riley?
I was going to ask just, we've been dancing around. We talked about Marcus's role a little bit, but could you just give us maybe like a little breakdown of what Portrait looks like now as far as the team and roles and current vision?
For sure. I'll talk about roles, and Marcus can talk about vision. So I'm our functioning CEO. I run the day-to-day of the business. My job is to make sure everyone stays on the train tracks, basically. Like I function in like head of coffee, so I still do our green coffee buying and help out a lot with sales. And that's where I spend most of my time. We have DJ Thomas on our team, who is our lead roaster, who facilitates all of our production roasting and scheduling. Kay Scott recently joined our team this past April, and she's production roaster and helps out with coffee education, which is really exciting. We have Khalid Smith, who's one of our co-founders. He's the man. Riley and him go way, way back.
Yo.
Fun fact.
Fun fact.
Dang it.
Fact.
Got one in.
Got a sip.
He's our operations manager, so he's our secret weapon. He's the man.
He's amazing.
Every order that comes in, he pushes out, and just he's incredible.
Really handsome too.
He's so
Extremely
handsome.
handsome.
Seriously.
Someone had to say it.
Somebody.
Like model level.
We were all thinking it.
Yeah.
Does a lot of modeling
Yeah.
for Portrait too. Extremely handsome. Even more handsome when he wears glasses.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, if you haven't
Didn't know
seen
that was
that,
possible.
It
yeah,
elevates.
yeah, it gets nuts.
It
So
elevates.
shout out Khalid. He honestly is the rock star of our business. It's like I cannot sit in this room and have the opportunity to chat with y'all without Khalid. So
Yeah, he seems like a really easy guy to love.
Very
Like a really
steady,
lovable guy.
diligent.
Yeah.
Oh, another fun fact. This is the third company that Khalid and I have worked together.
Hey,
Fun
let's do
fact.
a little cheers
Yeah,
to Khalid.
cheers.
Cheers to
to
Khalid.
Khalid.
Seriously.
All right.
Yeah.
To Khalid.
All right.
That's the breakout clip. So yeah, Khalid's our operations manager, and that's the ops team. And then John Awachekwa is our other co-founder. He is like incredible with storytelling and just like big vision pitching. He's really helped lead and craft out like the essence of what Portrait is. And then we have our marketing team. You can talk about that.
So we got Christine Ramirez, who's really kind of driving marketing these days. Fun fact, she started out as a mentee of mine in music, and we got paired up because of the music coffee connection. And then she interned with me at the record label that I'm at, and then I said, "Hey, why don't you come join the coffee team?" And she's been great. And as Aaron said, I'm kind of doing a lot of the external facing, communication, branding stuff at Portrait. So
Nice.
Which, like, specifically, what does that look like? The external communication stuff.
Yeah, that's a good question. Specifically, it has a lot to do with art direction, creative direction. So branding. We just wrapped the third iteration of Kindred, which is kind of like a seasonal coffee that we offer. It's a good opportunity to tell a story. And for folks who have been tracking along with that, the art kind of evolves. We're getting a little more specific and sophisticated in what we're trying to say there. Same thing with the branding. I mean, if you guys remember when we first launched, we had a friend of Aaron's, Kendall, designed kind of our first iteration of our bag. It was great, got the job done, and then we all got together and said, okay, I think we can probably say something a little more specific. And so I kind of led that out. And the early days, running social, writing all the copy, writing treatments for a lot of the video stuff that we're putting out. So that's more or less what that looks like.
Yeah,
So.
Writing copy. The
Copywriting.
best thing in the world.
It's my
love
wife
it.
does that.
Are you married to a copywriter?
I am.
Lucky man.
She's smart. Smart as a whip.
You guys have a beautiful brand.
I
Yeah,
know,
great
man.
website too.
Thank you.
And you guys do a lot of really awesome newsletters. I'll say that.
Christine.
Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, I think that that's somewhere we fall short, but
Yeah.
you guys are consistent with it too. It's
I
great.
like, and that's where I'm like the drill sergeant, where I'm just like, we have to send an email. But
Yeah.
I appreciate y'all's are really dope when I get them.
That's
all
all
Riley.
Big T right there.
few and
like
far between.
Stacy.
Yeah, this is all
Barry,
great. And then how
Tony.
about
You guys got a lot of coffees too.
yeah, no
Nice.
joke.
13.
It's fall season, man. PSL season.
How many year rounds you guys have?
6 now, I think.
That's
Founders Tony, Stacy Barry, Decaf technically, and then we just launched a true dark roast, darker the cherry. So
Oh,
6.
nice.
Yeah.
Is Award Tour rotating one too, or is that just?
Yeah, it's been something we've been experimenting with. As you can see, it's sold out, but we're trying to
Nice.
like highlight like award winning or like truly spectacular coffees.
Yeah.
And launch them through that label. So
So cool.
Sundog provided the last coffee we did, which was like a anaerobic Rwandan that was pretty
Whoa.
gnarly. It was
Awesome.
It was gross. It was
Award.
really good.
Oh,
It was gross.
I know what you mean when you say that, though.
Yeah.
Award Tour is a sick name.
Thank you.
Yeah.
Marcus came up with it.
Come
Did I?
on.
Well, you came up with all the branding and stuff around it. I was just, yeah.
Actually, Aaron came up with Award Tour. I mean,
Who is it?
I can't. It's
You
so
guys are
good.
too humble
I can't,
right now.
I can't take that.
I'll claim it. I did it.
But well, no, because the funny thing is, it's it's named after a tribe song, and so we did some storytelling around that, and kind of made the connection for people. But yeah, you got to
Nice.
take that one, bro. That's a banger.
Appreciate. Well, here's what'll happen. Sometimes I'll be like, "Hey, I got this idea," but Marcus is so good at building like a true campaign around it.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's just because I had the idea. Like Marcus did the legwork, but it was
Sure.
my idea.
The credit can be due both
Yeah,
ways.
Yeah.
it was a partnership.
Yeah.
Well, that's one of the most amazing things about having business partners.
Yeah.
Like the amount of raw ideas we just throw around. Like we have like a Thursday owners meeting. Just the absolute crap we get into in those meetings. Like we just get on these rabbit holes, but there's like so much magic that comes from that sometimes.
Okay. Yeah, you got to say that.
Yeah.
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 Yeah, sometimes. But just like refining these ideas together in kind of a really comfortable, safe environment where you can, anything goes is so important.
Yeah.
What's up with is there any rhyme to the inverse colors on the bag? Some are orange and some are white. Like the tones are swapped?
Yeah, all of our orange bags are year-round coffees, and the white ones are single origin, limited release ones.
So nice.
Cool.
I'm obsessed.
Thank you.
Buy some coffee, bro.
All right. Hey, yeah.
out to
www.portrait.coffee.
Shout out to you.
Everything is so
noticing.
reasonably priced too.
Yeah.
Props to you guys.
Yeah.
Thank you.
10 ounces?
310 grams, so 11 ounces. You know.
Yeah.
Wow.
You're more of a gram than an ounce.
Yeah, you
kind
know,
of
just
family.
grams. Like let's get granular.
We're
you know?
going,
Yeah, gram.
going metric. Going metric. One random story that just made me think of this is, and I kind of want to get into like wholesale and how that's like the driving part of your business, but we were in Portland, Maine last October, and we were like going to all these different coffee shops and businesses, and I swing into this like super hip Vietnamese breakfast spot.
Kong Tu Bot.
Yeah.
Oh,
and
fire.
I'm like just checking it out. Everybody's super cool. And then I'm like, I see a portrait bag over there, and I'm like,
Atlanta?
dang!
Wow.
Portland, Maine.
We out
That's
here.
great.
We out here, and it was amazing. So just shout out to, can you say the name?
I think it's pronounced Kong Tu Bot.
Kong
but
Tu Bot, yeah.
Maybe yeah.
I think
You're
that's
probably
right.
Shout
I
out
feel
to
like when you learn a name like that, probably the rest of the trip, I was just like, Kong Tu Bot. Kong Tu Bot.
Yeah.
It's in my head.
That was a really cool place.
It was great. And the food was great.
They were kind of in COVID mode at the time.
They were in COVID
You
mode.
know, like you couldn't really walk in. But I bet if you could walk in, it would be.
We saw in.
Yeah.
And it looked good.
Nice.
Yeah.
Looked really good. But yeah, you guys got some reach. Have
Yeah.
you guys international? Are you national?
National. Yeah. National. International is a good goal. I don't want to do like a fake international thing. Like, yeah, we sold one bag of coffee in Canada, you know.
Yeah.
we're on that threshold right now. Like we've sent one order to the UK and one order to maybe two to
You're
Canada.
international then. Cheers.
Well, I
We
don't know.
got 3 international partners.
Okay.
They've ordered
Okay.
twice, maybe.
I'm really interested to hear that side of it. Like, you guys started, and then you, in our eyes, were, you know, reaching a lot. You hit a lot of markets really fast, and I just want to know how that was for you guys to kind of like come out of the gate swinging with that. Did it feel in any way almost like kiss of death level of success at all?
Yes.
What,
Yeah.
What does that mean? What do you mean by that?
I say that because I've heard
Smart people
that
say it.
it might not relate with this, but you know, sometimes like if there's a huge podcaster and he mentions a product, especially from a smaller company on his podcast, like we do here for
Yeah,
sure with our
huge
dozens
podcasts.
of listeners.
Like the Oprah of specialty coffee?
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Like,
Thank
if,
you.
like if Oprah was like, I love portrait.
Yeah.
It would just be like, probably you guys would hear be like, oh
Yeah.
crap.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, we'd go place the Tesla orders
Yeah.
that day.
Yeah, so I think Tim Ferriss was the guy who they like coined the term around, because he would have a podcast, he would talk about a small product, and then the company would literally go out of business because they would get so backlogged.
Got you.
Yeah.
Get so
got you,
many
got you,
1-star
Kiss of
reviews.
death.
Yeah.
Clearly that hasn't happened with you guys.
Yeah.
It's not
Well,
the kiss of death.
No, I think it's internally we've reflected about it a ton, but I don't think we've talked about it externally very much. But well, fun fact for the listeners, for those of you who
got
don't
my-
know,
Fun fact.
this is
go.
this is a good fun fact.
Let's do it.
Portrait and Valor used to toll roast in the same space.
I totally forgot about
Yeah,
that.
yeah. So we both started our roasting programs around the same time.
Yeah.
Shout out to Peach Coffee Roasters. They're
out.
extremely generous in
yeah.
helping like really launch launching parts of our business.
For sure.
And yeah, it was so awesome at first of being like, oh man, like our Shopify, like there's orders coming in. This is great. Because you know, our whole goal was to start as a cafe concept, and COVID pushed us into roasting and e-commerce. And so in June of 2020, when there is a huge outpouring of support for Black-owned businesses, I mean, still to this day, some of the site visits is like record numbers. And it wasn't sustainable for where our business was at that time. And so it was just like a lot of Khalid and I just being like, I don't know, we just got to figure it out. And so,
Dude, dive into that a little bit. So, like, you see, you know, that support starts coming in, which is amazing.
Yeah,
Right.
yeah.
And you were roasting at Peach at the time.
yeah.
Like, your Shopify is like ding, ding, ding. I'm just unpack that a little bit more. What was that moment like? Or was there a moment?
I mean, there was definitely a lot of celebration. Like we were just like, oh dang, like this is happening. Like this is crazy, you know?
Yeah.
But it was, I I mean, I'm so thankful I wasn't a father at the time because I was like,
Yeah.
the amount we were working was
Those late
nuts,
nights
so.
at Peach.
Late nights at like super late nights. Like it'd be hilarious. So Khalid and I would load up our trunks with green coffee, like just like,
God.
dude, my car is
I'm triggered right now.
Yeah, my car is no longer with me. But yeah, like both of our transmissions I think went out, but
I
over
believe
time.
that.
But it'd be like, okay, let's throw like 600 pounds of green coffee in these cars, bring our bins, bring our labels, bring our bags, and just like go crazy. But it was so interesting because for a while we did this like kind of supreme drop for Portrait where every Tuesday we'd restock our inventory on what we roasted that Monday or whatever.
Okay.
And then when it sold out, it sold out.
Yeah.
So in that sense, it was like, okay, this, we kind of Jimmy rigged it to make it work. But
And
yeah.
you did that like through Shopify. You could like say, all right, well, we just got 3 sacks of this Colombian in, so I'm just gonna do some math, and it's like, all right, we can sell 300 bags or something.
Right, yeah.
And then,
of those, at the
dude,
time.
that's so smart to cap it, because you could go like, what happens when you just sell out? You can't get the green again.
Yeah.
Oh,
Yeah, and that
dude.
happened all the time. So, I mean, there was a lot of growing pains, but I think it's really helped set our like core values as it pertains to growing the business. Because we're always having this conversation around thinking about, all right, what's our capacity on the roaster? What kind of staff do we need to support this growth? Like, what does equity look like in caring for our employees, like as we continue to grow? Because it was so funny. I think we looked at our P&L when for the year 2020, and again, it was just like Khalid and I. And our labor cost was 7%.
Oh my god!
You're like,
Which
all right,
is
this
like-
is the new goal.
Yeah.
7%.
Yeah.
Standard.
7% forever. But no, it was like it was what's the reason why I'm sharing it was because we were so heads down.
Yeah.
And just so like focused on getting out orders.
You were not okay.
Yeah,
like,
we're-
during that time.
Yeah, we were just not okay.
Yeah.
It is
Well, and you
and-
also can't move the company forward, right?
and-
You're just roasting.
Yeah, we were just literally we were just heads down, just roasting, just getting orders out, and so that 7%, that's not a brag at all. That's just like it was just a moment when we actually did sit down and look at the numbers. I was like, what the heck?
Yeah.
Like, what have we been doing this whole time? And so and Marcus was really good about like kind of sitting us down and being like, he's been with his company for almost a decade and has seen them grow, change, and evolve, and so he was really kind of just being like, all right, like, let's talk about sustainability. Like, let's talk about what it does look like to get health insurance. Like, what do you and Khalid need? Like, how can we really like nurture and care for y'all? Because what you guys just did is like not sustainable. So
Right.
How did you receive that from him? Like, someone taking you, because you're in this like just grind by, like keep up with the orders, and then someone's like, hey, slow down. Like, how did you receive that? Was that like a breath of fresh air? Or were you like, no, we gotta get back to work?
I don't know. I think I was in like quite a funk for a while. I think
Yeah.
it took me a while to like chill out, to be honest. I don't know what your perspective on it would be. But
Yeah, I think it was because I had just finished this at the label that I work with. I'm on the executive team there, so it's like you're probably from my seat, just like 1/6 of the company. Where it's like, okay, I'm running marketing, but we also get together every Monday and we're thinking through and we're talking through like, hey, how are we going to keep this company running? How are we going to keep it going? You know. And I think we were fresh off this project where we were defining our values, and our COO is incredible, and she was very just open, and it was just these very open conversations about what type of company we wanted to be, and it was like a space where complaints had to quickly turn into ideas and things like that, and that was a very refreshing activity. I mean, out of that came a 10-week paternity leave policy.
Ooh.
Right before I had my first child, right?
Wow.
Out of that came, I think we started designing creative compensation packages for employees who'd been, I think she and I were the only ones who were close to being with the company 10 years. I mean, we'd gone from interns to executives, and it worked really, really hard. And so we were getting the chance to now shape the company past our, day-to-day roles. And so I'm looking over And I'm like, man, yo, like, you gotta reap the benefits of this now. Like, I can't, you know what I mean? Like, I can't. What kind of person would I be if I'm not like, hey, bro, you don't have a kid now, but you need to think about paternity leave. Like, hey, man, like, y'all need health insurance. Like, you know, these are real costs. These are real things. And we can get into talking about like, oh, Good Morning America just posted us. Like, oh, yeah, Target. All that good stuff. It's all fine and well and cool. But if you get sick and can't go to the hospital, like, that's lame. You know what I mean? If you guys,
That is lame.
you know what I'm saying? Like, if you guys
Yeah.
are, if the people who are putting in the work every day aren't able to, you know, afford to take some time off, then why are we doing this? Why would I, like, I can't sit aside and like not vouch for those things, which I'm not getting health insurance from the company, you know, even to this day, but you know, it's like, no, it only makes sense, you know what I mean? So I think Aaron's good about, immediately it wasn't like an emotional thing, I don't think. He just did it. It was like, all right, I was like, hey man, like, y'all need to think about health insurance. You need it, you know, forget owner's comp, like that conversation is not important right now. We need to reinvest in y'all. And he just did it. It was like, oh, here's some companies that I found. What do you think?
Yeah.
And I was like, good, do it, you know. And then he had his son.
Whoa.
Yeah, like it was funny. Probably a couple months later, we found out we were expecting. So it
Like,
was,
right, it was like he did it.
Yeah,
And
it
then
was-
maybe like 2 or 3 months go by and it's like, we're pregnant. And it was just like,
Yeah.
see,
Okay.
that's,
Yeah,
you know what I mean?
The peace of mind's got to be
yeah,
out of this world for that.
Yeah, it was very nice to know that that wasn't something I had to be concerned about.
And it speaks to something else of like seeing that short term, really big pop and translating those resources and benefits to long term company viability and success. Because I'm sure there's something in your head, and maybe you could speak to this. I don't know what your Shopify looks like now, but like, you know, at some point, Good Morning America is not going to post about you anymore.
Facts.
Like these people that are seeing like the support, they're not going to see those articles anymore because that just like fades. So it's like, how are we going to send this coffee and sustain a connection like beyond like a support advertisement?
Yeah.
And it seems like, because, I mean, that was over 2 years ago and you guys are continuing to grow. How do you feel like you were able to translate from a really big pop to like a sustainable coffee roastery? Because you guys are doing it, and kudos to that.
Yeah, I appreciate it. I mean, I think it's multifaceted, and Marcus can talk about from like he can talk about a lot of parts of it, but I think it was a lot of like relationship building with our customer base. We have really incredible customers who support our values and our brand. And so the newsletters is like one way of continuing to communicate and build relationship with them. And to have them advocate for our brand as well. And I think Marcus can talk a little bit more, but I think we've also started to extend our brand in the conversation with different campaigns like the Fueling Creators. You want to talk about that?
Yeah. I think maybe before that, I think it's because I think this is a beautiful thing about the company. Aaron is very he's kind of got this like knack for responsibility, right? And like sustainability. And he's not the kind of person who's interested in fluff. Like he's a what are you, an 8 Enneagram?
Yeah.
So if something kind of feels fluffy, he's gonna like challenge it and try to understand it, right? And so I think that was a major driver for, okay, Good Morning America is cool, but cats pop up on those like we can sit here and talk about, oh yeah, we did this, we did that, but man, people pop up on that stuff all the like. Think about it. Good Morning America has been running every morning.
Yeah. It's like part of what they do.
For
They just-
about as long as America, right, has America. So think about how many people they've highlighted. Like it's special. It's cool. You know, shout out to them for having us on. But at the end of the day, like cats be on there every day, B. So I think there was like this understanding of like, yo, there's gonna be a tomorrow. But then I think from my perspective, working in music, I know what it feels like to have the #1 album in the country, and then 2 years later, you can't get press.
Whoa.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? And I know there's this funny thing in the music industry where they're like, everybody goes to LA and like the proximity or the feeling that something is gonna happen, it just like it covers you, and then you come back home and it's like, oh, like I gotta go back to work.
Yeah.
Right. And so I think, again, kind of like being able to see that on this side and be like, yo, don't go out like that. Like, don't be that guy. Like, you know.
Yeah.
But to what Aaron was saying, I think developing that that relationship with the customers, it's the story that we told, and it's what people bought. I mean, a brand is a promise, and it's like we set the promise before people, and they bought in, and so now it's just sort of like this. Almost like this conscious thing to say, like, man, we got to deliver on that. We got to make sure that we're keeping up with that, even as it might need to broaden or shape or look different, stuff like that. We need to honor that agreement that we set out with, because if we don't, then we don't have a business.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. What would you say is the promise of your brand? That's probably a pretty high level question, but what do you feel like you are connecting with your customers on?
Oh, you want me to tackle that?
Well, let's like,
well,
it's multifaceted.
Yeah,
Totally.
I mean, I think so. We came out the gates saying, "Hey, we want to pour a new narrative in the coffee industry."
Great tagline.
Appreciate
I've always admired that.
And I think over time we've realized how multifaceted that promise is. So like, I think the thing I'm most passionate about today is creating economic opportunities for people of color in the specialty coffee industry. So nothing gets me more excited than being able to like sit, train, educate black and brown people on like how to roast coffee, how to evaluate coffee, how I think through green coffee buying, like all this stuff. That's super exciting. It's also like kind of behind closed doors in a sense. Sure. That's it's internal facing. But now we're talking about like, okay, cool. How can we offer free educational courses to the public, to the West End, and like help deliver that promise?
Yeah.
So that's one side of it, and then.
Yeah, I mean, I was freaking out about this for a while, and it's actually something I think about like all the time. Since Aaron told it to me, we started doing based on that promise, we started doing these cuppings, like these frequent cuppings where people can come to the space, limited, and they can cup the coffee with the team. And I'm not there when it happens, but Aaron called me one day and he was like, "Hey man, like somebody said something that I think you might think is valuable at one of these cuppings, and they said I'm looking for friends." And I like. No lie, I'm around the corner from my house. I pulled the car over and was like, wait a minute, say that again? And he said, somebody came and said that they were looking for friends. And I'm like, that's where we go next, right?
Yeah.
Because it's almost like, a lot of people don't know this, but Instagram started out, it wasn't a photo sharing app in the beginning. I think it was like something about like indexing places you go or something. But people were using it to share photos. And so, Instagram at the time was smart enough to say, well, that's what they're telling us. We did a good job with what we set out to do, but now people are telling us what they want from us now, which is to share and display photos of their food. So let's optimize around that. Like they pivoted, right? And I think for us, it's not so much I want to be because representation I think is a huge part of what it's a huge part of what we're standing on, but I think now we can go a little bit deeper than that, right? Like, oh, y'all want to be a part of this, like you want community, you want to feel like a friend of this brand, and so in our last meeting, when Kay just kind of had this idea, and it's like, yes, like how can we tangibly present people with friendship, to continue to develop this relationship? So, yeah.
I'm sure the cafe is a big part of that.
Yeah, absolutely. And we're super excited to be finally actually under construction on it. And I was going to say, too, that's one thing I enjoy so much about y'all's brand is how inviting it is. So, like, every time I've been, I'm not up this way too frequently, but every time I am, I love coming in the cafe and, like, getting this, like, wild greeting and, like, this extra pep of, like, Napoleon Dynamite like energy.
Wow, that's a first.
What is that tangibly though? I'm curious because I've never been.
It's like it's sick. You should go. Like no, I mean, they probably can't explain it, but it's like no, their team is like excited to work there.
Nice.
Like you can tell, and we haven't been able to fully express it, but like my interest to what Marcus is saying is in hospitality. It is in friendship. It is in and coffee is just a conduit for those conversations and for that friendship. Same thing. Like I really love wine. It's like, that's something we do now. It's like, no, like at night, like in the morning, let's have coffee. At night, like let's have a nice wine. Mm-hmm. But their brand is so inviting. Like when you walk in the door, like their team lets you know that they're excited for you to be there. And that's what actually builds lasting relationships with consumers, which is really dope.
Mm. Yeah.
Yeah, we found that, I don't know, we took us a while to find this, but even with like our wholesale program, most of our wholesale accounts have stemmed from cafe interactions.
Yeah.
And so that has kind of led us to be like, maybe we should open some more cafes and like to grow that side of it. Because, you know, when we were first bringing the business up, we were you know, saying our roasting business is going to, you know, it's what we're going to build our business on. And I guess we've maybe pivoted a little bit to be like, you know, where we think we hit it right and really fulfill our mission is through the cafes. Yep. So if we have to turn it around, I mean, obviously opening cafes helps the roasting side as well.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I think that's something again, like Aaron and I talk all the time, and a lot of the tenor of our conversations is like, man, I'm happy for you, right? Because coffee is something that I feel fortunate enough to be a part of, but you know, this is your dream. But what I do appreciate is to share a story around the value of this. I remember my first job. I was 15. I was working at the mall, and I worked at Foot Action. I was a sales associate.
Come on.
And the manager of the store at the time was this guy named Rick Simons. I'm sure he's way up in the company now. He used to ride me about how I postured in the store. You do not turn your back on the front door of the store.
Wow. Yeah.
You don't do it. No, it doesn't matter where you're standing in the store. You, as a matter of fact, don't go past like the first. Never be, if we're empty, never be further than like 10 feet from the front door, and never turn your back on the door. And he used to just come up and just be on me about that. And I think it translated, like to your point, like it translated into, you know, folks would, if I wasn't at the store, I'd come into work and they'd be like, you weren't here yesterday, so I didn't shop. But I'm here. I came back to buy shoes from you.
Wow.
I'd be like, I mean, bro, they just shoes. Like I appreciate the love. But I think those things translate. And when I found out, and the more and more I discovered that that's what Aaron's about, and that's what's driving specialty coffee for me, I'm like, yeah, I like being a part of this because it matters, right? It's not just hospitality. It's not just a buzzword, right? It's these things matter, you know?
Yeah, and the cool thing about coffee, too, is, like, with shoes, you know, that person, they're probably not coming in for months again.
Right.
Like, they got their pair.
Yeah.
But with coffee, we get to see people multiple times a day. And so there's like a no hiding who you are aspect to that. Like, you can be fake nice for an interaction, but like they're just going to come back and they're going to know you. Yeah. So it's something that we've really been hammering on in training is like the whole point of our orientation and training is to like strip away this identity of like when I come to work, I'm different. Like, I need to like be a worker. It's like, no, just continue. Like we hired you because we believe in who you are. So come to work and just be that. You know, like we're also going to ask people what we can get them to drink and how their day's going, or like do the actual operation. But the whole point is like to get Ross behind the bar and to get Lillaby and Mikey and Joey. We don't want barista 1, barista 2, barista 3. We just took away the title of barista 2. It was just like,
yeah, and it can kind of sound like pimping on some level, like right, like And what I mean by that is it can sound like you're telling your employees what they want to hear so that they like coming in. But going back to Rick, I remember he's the first person to ever tell me he told me that I had a great smile. I'd never heard that before. Nobody had ever told me that. And he wasn't just saying it. He was like, hey, keep it. Like, right. And so if I wasn't smiling or if I showed up and I wasn't really, he'd get me off the floor and he said, you need to go get yourself together. Like, because we need that smile. Like, you're you when you're smiling. So, and so it's just so cool again to hear those same type of things showing up, you know, for me personally. So, yeah.
Shout out to Rick.
Yeah,
Rick.
I'm sure he's listening.
And I love what you're saying too about how for your current like ideal work or ideal vision, you're in the perfect position for that. You know, as a CEO who is supposed to be like activating and empowering the team, you get to do that with your role. And I find that interesting too when we talk about like the public perception of Valor or like the public vision or goals versus like the internal goals, right? I don't really know where I'm going with that, but I just find it like we have our own vision within the company.
No, I'm tapping into what you're saying because actually, as our team's grown, this has been more of a conversation because sometimes I'll like, I'm like relatively a pretty private person. Like if you looked on my Instagram, like you could kind of tell like a little bit about me, but you'll like, if you look at my Instagram, you'll probably see a random story of either my dog, my son, a bottle of wine, or like some hijinks at the shop, but there's no like really complete story. And my job or position is like pretty public facing technically, like as in I could choose to be way more public, right? But to what you're saying, like my energy and my interest is very internal at Portrait. Like I'm trying to develop
Right.
like young professionals.
Yeah.
So how I choose to invest my time and energy is like, no, I mean, I'm going to show up at work at 7. We're going to like cup these coffees. We're going to talk about how we can get like an inch better today. We're going to make sure like all our A, B's, and C's are done, and y'all enjoy your day, you know? And it's that 365 commitment to that I'm interested in. And that's what I'm passionate about. And so, but then the other side of that too is like to continue to fulfill that more public facing promise. It's like, all right, well, how can we empower our team as a whole to carry that out? That's not something I have to carry out on my own, if that makes sense.
He's a young Rick.
Young Rick.
Oh, yeah.
Young Rick.
He's a young Rick.
Yeah, you guys, one thing you do so well, you were talking about, you know, your different campaigns. And I guess maybe do either of you have advice for some of these up and coming coffee companies who might be listening, who are like, have heard, like, you know, for the longest time I had heard like, you got to do more campaigns, like social campaigns. And I was just like, what does that even mean? So
Yeah.
how do you, you know, get inspired for these ideas, and then how do you kind of like put them into action?
Man, yeah. I think it really comes down to what's true for you, right? So, because really what it is storytelling. You know what I mean? And the best stories are the ones that are like true, right? And that's not a comment about morality. It's a comment about what's apparent, like what's actually happening, like what actually moves you. And I think if you can tap into that and like take it seriously, like own it, then from there it's just, okay, build a methodology around it. Like find out what are the best ways to communicate it. You know what I mean? So I'll just give you an example of how this plays out. Like what's true for us is we love hip hop, right? And not just like all of what's out there, right? But A Tribe Called Quest, like you can see the story there, right? It's like, you know, roasting coffee has a lot to do with the process of producing rap records, like, you know, and then we go all into that, right? That was first us saying, like, looking in and saying, well, that's true. I think between the two of us, we might have all of their records on vinyl. I've overspent on some of them, right? So that's true. That's something that's true about us that we think is valuable enough to share. And then putting some process behind it, it's, okay, well, but what parts of that make the connection for somebody else? Like, how can you use that true thing about yourself that you think is worth sharing to then serve somebody else? So it wasn't just us saying like, oh, look at us, like we're cool, like, you know, we know hip hop, like
old hip-hop.
It's 2020, it's 2022, and we're still into Tribe, you know.
Yeah.
That wasn't what it was about. It was, nah, let's use this. Maybe you don't like Tribe, or maybe you don't even know about them, but you know about coffee, right? So how can we take that to serve you and say, if you like our coffee, you might like this music, and here's why. Oh, and here's a playlist to kind of
just different touch points for people to engage.
Yeah. And like just to bounce off that too, one thing I love to do is, I mean, we all have brands that we appreciate and support with our dollars. And I always like to just do research and see what other people are doing. So whether it's y'all or Methodical in the coffee space, right? I'm trying to think of some other. I love what Nigel's doing up in New York with Drip. I love the passion that someone like Caleb Bellman has with Fingered Filter, and even Lucas with Unblended. Like so that's coffee space. I'm like, oh, what is everyone up to? What's going on? Like, what's your brands out in California or New York? Like, being the epicenter sometimes of moving forward. I just like to see what's going on. But then what I find most fascinating is looking at like other completely different brands.
Yeah.
Totally.
Someone who's a email marketing consultant, his name is Robbie Fitzwater. One time I was in a meeting, I'll never forget. He was like, if you want to see the future of commerce, look at women's cosmetics. And I was like, what?
Agreed.
Yeah.
We talk about this all the time.
Yeah. I mean, none of us identify as women here, but it's like,
This is true.
but it's like, man, my wife, the conviction she has around the products she uses and why she tells me they're important and the value and all this stuff. I'm like, dang, like whatever, I guess. Like there's no coming back from what you just explained. So like we both are huge fans of 316. It's a premium fashion brand in New York and LA. Andrew's a friend of ours and they do some really inspiring, cool, detail-oriented stuff. East Fork Pottery is another one where I'm just like, damn, like the attention to detail on everything they do is just like immaculate.
They are a really cohesive brand, like you were talking about earlier. Just looking at it and being like, yeah, I can see what they're about.
Oh
yeah,
visually.
And so those are looking at some of those brands. That's kind of where I get the most inspiration of being like,
for sure,
the standard of excellence they hold themselves to through and through. It's like that's what we're striving for. And that's in. There's this book called Think Again by Adam Grant, and he just talks and Range by David Epstein. This idea of like pulling from different places, rethinking what you currently thought about coffee, not just looking at Onyx for inspiration, but it's like there's other brands, even from like a wholesale perspective. It's like sure, like they're the best, I'll give it to them, but it's like they're not the only, right?
Sure.
So
and getting close to that isn't just going to be through imitating the best,
right? Yeah, imitation's cheap. Like anyone can do that,
Yeah. Well, and I think on the practical side, I loved the question. I feel like I could go on and on about this, but I think there's something to being able to consume good campaigns on the front end. Like, man, why did that resonate with me? What about that worked? Right? How did they approach this and kind of growing that palette for, man, it wasn't distracting. They didn't confuse me. It was clear. It was delightful. It didn't feel like a rip from the next thing. You know what I mean? Those are good ways, I think, to kind of build the chops and kind of cut your teeth on that type of work.
Yeah. I guess another practical thing of it, like, you guys have done coffees with artists and creators in collaboration in the past. And when you do that, you just, get to expand your scope into their audience. And that's, it's genius.
Yeah. It's kind of a way of us, like, giving them their flowers almost, to say, hey, we look up to you. Like, in some way, you've seasoned us. You've seasoned our approach. So let's just do this together.
It's wild, too, like, how... Because what you were talking about dissecting yourself and like why do I like the things I like, and that is just a question I always come back to with Valor. Like, how can we be true to ourselves and tell a true story, like you said, but in a way that's relatable. It's like, I like Tribe too. You know, like I found out about them. You know, I like grew up in Dawsonville, you know, 40 minutes north of here. But like I started hearing this rap music with like live drums, and I was like, this is sick. And so I like went through all of their stuff, you know, like live bass. And it's like I relate with this in a different way that you guys do, you know. But I still love it.
Yeah.
And there's just so many different facets, you know, to a brand where people come in from different angles.
Yeah, and I mean it's all about the entry points, right? And I think just to ping off that, maybe to give y'all something, I got deeper into Tribe from my best friend in college, this kid Max Rothman, white Jewish kid from Boston, who, you know, I had the first generation iPod, but I didn't have a computer, and he used to put music. He was super deep into the golden era of hip hop, and he had it all. So he would just put it all. He put it all on my iPod,
Rothman.
and we would just go. And he wrote in the newspaper this beat. Like I'm still like this is a white guy who had his own vantage point on hip hop.
Yeah.
I'm still to this day a beneficiary of his owning that and sharing it out. So even hearing you say, no, I like those things too. I'm like, yo, that's gold.
Yeah.
Right. And maybe there are people out there who like Valor that you could potentially start who may also like those things, but not know how to kind of get it off.
Yeah.
Or who may like those things, but it's just not being put in front of them. You know what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You kind of create an invitation to share.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like the women's cosmetics thing. We did a lot of looking at those products when we were redesigning our box.
Yeah, Glossier was pretty inspirational for our rebrand, and
That's cool.
They're crushing it.
yeah, it was them and like a lot of candle companies. and
Melion.
stuff. Yeah,
Candles is another one, and you were talking about you were saying something about consumers coming back again, and what our industry has, like women's cosmetics, and like candles, is it's a replenishable product.
Yeah.
Like someone is gonna buy a bag of coffee again, and what I think sometimes our industry misses is like, I want someone to be a repeat purchaser of Portrait, just as much as I do Valor. Like the reality for our market still is like we're just trying to get consumers from Dunkin' Donuts and Starbucks.
Yeah.
Our market share is so little. We're trying to translate people to enjoy like just a higher quality of coffee, roasted with a certain level of expertise, because they're gonna buy another bag of coffee again. Like 67% of Americans drink coffee every day, which is insane.
I like that.
But when you think about that, it's like, all right, like, look, I'll ship you some Valor, I'll ship you some Methodical, I'll ship you whatever. Like, you just need, like, our job is to educate the consumer of the quality of their product. And so a company like Glossier is just incredible at that education.
yeah.
to
We
consumers.
found the best way to do that is through the cafes.
Yeah.
Like, because, you know, like when we first started Valor, I remember our mission statement was, we want to change the way people perceive coffee in North Georgia, which really meant you guys don't know anything and we know everything. Help us get you to drink coffee black and not with cream and sugar.
Yeah.
That's really what that
Coffee
meant.
flavored sugar milk.
Right. And we pivoted away from that. Just,
Thank God.
yeah, you know, like, where was I going with that? I'm just talking about like,
Taking more of an empathy approach first, like a relationship approach first.
yeah, I was talking about the cafe and how that's just like a great way to educate people. And a lot of times that's not through, like someone walks into the cafe, education for them can look like us being kind to them.
Yeah.
And, you know, eventually you build up that relationship and they start, you know, trusting you more, and then they drink a different coffee than they normally would. But I think in the beginning we viewed education as like someone walks in, as like orders a 16-ounce coffee with cream and sugar, and we're like, hey, what about getting a pour over? That might be better for you. You know,
Yeah.
it's like, that's kind of
Well, and
cold.
I like that word that you used, empathy, because, and it's so funny, I think words like empathy are usually thought of as like separate from doing good business. But I think it's actually at the heart of it.
Absolutely.
It's actually people use words like innovation and things like that. If you really want to kind of fast track yourself into innovation, empathy.
Yes.
What are people's real felt needs, and how can I get in the game of trying to solve for them, right? So a lot of times we come into spaces and we say, well, I want to solve for me, right? I had a bad experience at a coffee shop and I didn't feel welcome, so now I'm gonna, and that can get you somewhere, right?
Yeah,
That can-
there's a group of people that probably relate.
Yeah, but after a while, like that energy, it gets exhausting, right? Of
Yeah.
like, oh man, I'm in North Georgia and these folks don't really, it gets, you can get somewhere with that, but after a while it gets exhausting. But if you can kind of flip it on its head and say, well, hey, why haven't you? Tell me about the last time you had a great cup of coffee. And it may be something seemingly so benign, Maybe it wasn't even the coffee. Maybe it was just the way that the person who gave it to him felt. It's like, oh, you know what? How can we tap into that and consistently figure out, man, how can we think of 9, 10, 50, 100 ways to make people feel that?
Yeah. Dude, empathy, I feel like that word has kind of got drug through the mud a little bit in the last 5 years. But when we first started, that was like you said, the core of our entire mindset is like, how can we put ourselves in our customers' shoes from A to Z of like every touch point of our brand?
Yeah.
And I think we maybe said this on the podcast before, but even just designing our cafe, like getting in the customer's shoes, how can we just design it to where it's like the most pleasurable for them in that?
Well, and it translates again. I think coming back to the campaigns thing, that can get very practical, and it transcends industry. I was looking at something where they talked about Alfred Hitchcock, right, and how he talked about his films, and how they were so simple, and everything in his framing, everything in his storytelling was purposeful because he wanted to serve his audience. And there was this quote where someone had said, Hitchcock, how could you be so preoccupied with your audience? And he said, because it perplexes me how other directors could be so preoccupied with themselves. Right? And so you could just imagine who might have been doing film at the same time as Hitchcock that may have kind of come to mind when he was saying that. And then think, all this time later, we're not talking about that guy, right? We're not going back and watching his movies.
Yeah.
We're going back and we're watching Hitchcock stuff, right? And that has a lot to do with the fact that he gave us something. He served us, right? And he was empathetic to us, and his product stood the test of time,
Yeah. It's amazing.
I'm curious how you guys see this. I mean, the stigma and the past, and clearly you do see it considering your mission, but specialty coffee has so often been linked to gentrification to the point where you even see in some scenarios there's protests whenever a new coffee shop opens. How do you unlink those with it being a I'm just interested to hear what you guys think there.
Give us a step-by-step process.
Yeah.
1, 2, 3.
Give us the anti-gentrification coffee club
Well,
thing.
shout out Bartholomew. But I'm gonna butcher the metaphor, but our co-founder, business partner John Almanchukwa, he always talks about gentrification being a tidal wave that is a lot of times out of the control of the individual. And that's not me co-signing exploitation of real estate or of people. That's not what I'm saying there. But for portrait, it's like the goal of the work we're doing is not to battle gentrification. Like at the end of the day for us, look, I am not well enough versed to like truly have this conversation, but it's like there'll be plenty of people that accuse us of gentrifying our neighborhood when our cafe's open. And yeah, we will be selling like specialty coffee beverages. Now there will be a level of intentionality to our menu and our pricing, but at the end of the day, like, we're trying to target a certain demographic of
Yeah.
folks, right? Like, but just by the nature of the product we sell,
Right.
Right. We sell.
You got costs.
Yeah, I mean, we sell $15 to $20+ bags of coffee. Like, we just have to be honest with ourselves.
To honor one of the primary convictions of why you started, right? Which is to honor the people growing it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, to represent the producers well. And so, I mean, yeah, our costs are directly tied to a C market, you know?
Yeah.
So it's not, so we have a rationale to talk about our costs and talk about all these things. But at the end of the day, does that justify the means to, does that justify? I don't know.
Well, yeah, and I mean, I think sometimes like business people might have to understand that they're business people, right? And like activists are activists, right? Like activists, just because you're one, that doesn't mean you're qualified, right, to be the other. And it's cool that in our generation the lines are blurring. It's awesome. I only say that from a perspective of humility, kind of like Aaron said. Like we can't sit here and talk deep about gentrification, right? But one thing we can do is look at the utility of what we have, right? So our coffee shop could be, right, very well linked to the rise of property taxes. A great coffee shop around the neighborhood means home values go up, means property taxes go up, means somebody might get displaced, right? But the utility of what we have is you could come to the coffee shop and learn, right? Some skills that would allow you to create a raft so that you can float as this tidal wave comes in, right? Because that's all we're doing. You know what I mean? Well, that's not all of it, but it's a part of it. And as we do things like that, then it's like we can't necessarily battle the thing. It's like that metaphor of someone trying to, I'm going to butcher it, but it's someone with a bucket trying to, scoop water and throw it back into the ocean to kind of keep the tide from rising too high. It's like, okay, you can try to, do that or build a system that's going to make the work a little more sustainable for you. And I think that system for us is people, just focusing on the people who could come in and, learn some skills and be able to support themselves long term.
Yeah, I'm sure what you're doing too is creating opportunity in your neighborhood. You're probably not trying to hire a bunch of white kids from the suburbs to drive in to work behind your bar because they have coffee skills.
Sorry, no affirmative action over here.
White or black kids.
Can you hire
from the
me?
suburbs.
Yes.
Can you hire me? Because I'm a white kid from the suburb. I would like to work for you.
Oh, well, like, are we having a job interview?
I mean,
Think of this as a job interview.
Ross's interview.
Ross.
I think we're going to be absolutely intentional about interviewing and hiring in our community.
Yeah.
Because the customers that we're serving, we want to have a direct relationship with the people behind the bar.
Totally.
And we're hoping that they don't just see each other at Portrait. We see each other at Q Time at the restaurant down the street. We see each other at Monday Night Brewing down the road. Like we want to be a active part of our community from beginning to end. And too, it was just, to tag on to what you were saying, I was in a meeting yesterday with the Atlanta Wealth Building Initiative. It's like a initiative 100% focused on closing the racial wealth gap here in Atlanta. And it was just like fascinating talking with them about gentrification, about black owned businesses, about like some of the gaps we need to close. So yeah, as it pertains to specialty coffee, I don't know. I think with your brand is like, I appreciate you guys are like, you opened up in your community, in your neighborhood, and I appreciate you guys have been really focused on serving your demographic, if that makes sense. Now, yeah, if you decided to be like, we're going to open a coffee shop in, I don't know, name X, quickly changing community, I think it'd be a fair conversation to ask why. And to be frank, we've actually had that conversation with other specialty coffee companies here in Atlanta, and they were actually very generative. And kudos to them of just being like, hey, like what? And I was having this conversation with someone the other day. It's like, well, what's your end goal? To what you're saying, is it to make money? Is that why you're opening this cafe? Because that I don't have that much respect for if that's the ultimate end goal of your work.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with it, but it doesn't align with my core values. So I think we can ask questions like that and really explore together. So
That's all very, very insightful.
Yeah,
I love. I don't love it, but it's a good the tidal wave metaphor is great.
Shout out, John.
I did want to ask about. I want to ask about two things. One was you've mentioned Khalid and John and yourself are the founders.
This guy.
Oh, hey.
Oh yeah. I guess that's why
So
I'm here.
we're talking for how, and maybe you guys both please speak to it. How's that dynamic been? 4 people, probably. It sounds like a couple of those guys are doing other things as well. You've been going for a few years now. Yeah, how's it going? Because I'm just, we're 3 guys, but we're all in, and so that makes the company have to look different. Of like we have to scale to a certain point so that we can all make money from this exclusively. How's that been having a balance of people working primarily outside, but also like being a founder of a company?
That's so funny. We just
Pregnant pause.
All right, so I'll talk from the insider, and Marcus talk from outsider. Yeah, it's been really challenging. I mean, I think it's been really challenging and rewarding in a lot of ways. I think they've been incredible about empowering me and encouraging me to lead the team and make decisions and trust my intuition. And we definitely have healthy dialogue about that intuition and decision making at times. But I would say they've been very honoring.
And are you the only full-time
And
founder? Or
Yeah, I am, and Khalid as well.
Khalid.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah. And then the other 2 are
John and Marcus.
yeah.
Correct. Yeah. And my wife and John's wife were integral to launching the business as well.
Hey.
Aaron did all of our original photography and still does for portrait, and Chandra, John's wife, is designing the shop.
Your wife's name is Erin?
Aaron and Aaron. I knew it would come up.
That sounds familiar. I feel like I knew that. But anyways, you were talking about the dynamic of all that.
Yeah. I mean, it's been at times it's hard to explain all that goes into running a business day to day. Like, super random example. It's like 8:00 last night. I have to run to the shop to exchange a pair of keys with a contractor, and it's not. And that's just the everyday. There's like ups and downs and just like random inconveniences and challenges that sometimes aren't even worth communicating.
Yeah.
And
Speaking
I don't
this
know.
guy's language right here.
Hey.
Yeah, and it's just the day to day, and it's kind of just part of the responsibility you carry. But it can be challenging at times to communicate all that's going on or summarize. So, yeah.
Yeah, dude. We face that dynamic, even all being 100% in the company, of just being over different things. Sometimes it is more stressful here for Ross and Riley than for me at the cafe. And like, how do you view that in like eyes of like what's the most fair, or do you just like own your crap? And you're like, all right, I signed up to be the fall guy for this area. So, my people called out for the weekend. So this owner's going to go work the weekends, but the other guys don't have to because that's not their area.
Yeah.
And then when do you communicate like frustration or before it even gets to resentment sort of stuff? It's hard. That is a very, I'm sure maybe you might be able to relate to this, but like I would never do this by myself. So I'm always like, I'm so grateful that we have partners. But then that is probably one of the harder areas is, and him, I would think about Riley too. He's endeavoring into this like video podcast realm, and there's just like challenges that he's facing that I can offer little to no support in, and watching him, wrestle with something and have a hard time with something, and I'm over here like, well, everything's good at the cafe, so my bases are covered.
Yeah.
And Ross the same with when he's like innovating a new chapter of the business, whether that's like he kind of let out on our cold brew and kegging and all that stuff, and he was probably going through the hardest time there. And yeah, so it's interesting that there's just different seasons. So I can just really relate to that,
Yeah.
especially I'm sure as the cafe opens or anytime someone's just involved with more personnel, I feel like there's always a little more variable to it as well.
That's totally true. And I think you touched on two things that I think are really important that I've had to grow in. You talked about fairness, and you talked about, I don't know if you explicitly said it, but expectations too, of
Sure.
being like, this barista called out, but I'm the one who runs the cafe, so is that just on me, or is it a fair expectation that's just on me, or do I communicate that I don't feel like it should be all on me? And then you realize like, oh, this is just 100% internal dialogue I'm having with myself. I haven't communicated my needs or expectations to my business partners. And then, so that's on you, or that's on me. So I think that's something that I've had to really grow on, and being like, oh, like, well, if I don't think something's fair, like I need to be the one to communicate that.
Yeah, it's up to you to communicate it. Totally.
If someone's not meeting my expectations, I need to clarify that, or if it's the other way of being like, oh, I feel like I'm not contributing enough. Let me communicate that and see if maybe Marcus does need help, right? Or as team members, like, are we meeting each other's expectations? That's a conversation, honestly, we've had a ton this year.
Yeah, yesterday.
So you said you would talk internally about all that. What's it like, having outside partners a part of it? What's it like?
The first thing that comes to mind for me is team and ego. I think as a teammate, for me, I full-time work in music, sometimes I teach, things like that. And so for me, it's probably best to look at it at least personally, to look at it through the lens of, okay, I'm doing all these other things. So that puts me in position to give a lot. And that's probably the best, healthiest way for me to approach this thing, right? Mm-hmm. So for instance, we did this project on shaping, core values. Like for the company I work at, I wrote a 12-page document. It's well branded, all this stuff to articulate our values. Well, now I can come in and say, hey, let me pass along like all of the benefit of going through that exercise. Save you some time, kind of bring you the benefit of that. But ego says just because it worked over there, or balancing ego would say just because it worked over there doesn't mean it's gonna work over here. So so from an outsider's perspective, it's knowing like, hey, contribute, but then also know that has to be run through the filter of like what's actually needed right now. You know what I mean? And I think humility as well. I mean, we live in this culture of for a long time it was like, oh, 9 to 5 is lame. Like, the real folks are the ones that are, entrepreneurs. And it's like, okay, like that makes a great tweet.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? But can you like properly look at who you are and what you contribute to the larger atmosphere of things and be true to that? You know what I'm saying? And I think as an outsider, there's kind of been that balance of like, nah, like I'm cool. Kind of. There's this poem I committed to memory in college. It says something to the effect of like, if you can stand and cheer it takes a man to stand and cheer while the other fellow stars. And I think sometimes that tension can come up when you're not like full time in the thing. Yeah. Right? It's like, oh, Good Morning America called. Well, I haven't been here in 2 weeks. You know what I'm saying?
Let's get you both in the picture for that one.
Like, no, I'm a co-founder, right? You know what I'm saying? Let me get the mic. It's like, nah, man, like, go, dude. You were there when they called. Go, do that.
Yeah.
Like, that's, you know what I mean? I'll be in the credits. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So, I mean, that's a little bit of what kind of rattles around in my head and thinking about that. And I think I love the position that I'm in because it's like you kind of get to watch something that, someone else dreamt up, and you get to contribute to it, and you get to kind of see the folks who are working in it daily. Sometimes it's coming in the shop and saying like, man, it looks good in here. And y'all are crushing it. You know what I mean? Sometimes it's just sending a note to say, hey, I'm drinking the coffee right now, and it's amazing. Like y'all are great. You know what I mean? So,
speaking to your, personal journeys, what sacrifices have you made to get where you are?
are you talking in the context of portrait or
No, personally, like if you will divulge, I can say for me, like there was a season where we were working so much with Valor and other jobs because we weren't taking any money from Valor that we lost all of our friends, like all of our individual friends, and we became each other's only friends. But that was only in the context of work. Like I was playing guitar a lot, and like I kind of like all those gigs dried up because I had to say no to them because of Valor, and that was just like I'm not a victim for that. It's just that was a sacrifice I made because that's what I wanted to do. Do you guys have anything like that comes to mind?
I definitely would say like there's been a ton of repair that's been necessary like in my marriage. The same thing where it's like, well, going back to the beginning of this conversation, 2020, I decided to like go all in on portrait and fulfilling orders and a lot of late nights. And it's like, I mean, I made that like an idol, and chose to sacrifice relationships for that. And so now it's like, there's a lot of repair that's needed. That's happening. And even with our friendship, it got way more complicated when we became business partners because we were, we were best friends. We were in each other's weddings. We were celebrating like family. Like we were doing all that stuff before we had a business. And so the value of trust and like what that means, like even that has been, complicated and something that we're always working on. So I mean, mentally, emotionally, spiritually, there's a lot of unaccredited for costs. And I do think it's valuable to acknowledge those as well. They're honestly way more important than acknowledging accomplishments, in my opinion. So,
yeah. Two things come to mind for me. Portrait, we put the hard work in to actually launch, like our Kickstarter, all that type of stuff, when I was on paternity leave. So I'm supposed to be taking 10 weeks off work to be there and present for the birth of my first child, and I did. And at the same time, I'm like working, right? I'm leaving the house. I'm doing these different things. My son was just born, and portrait is making headlines, and there's phone calls, and there's campaigns and stuff like that. So there's that. There's a little bit of that. Is portrait JoJo's brother? Which one of these kids? Which one is a kid and which one is just a thing, right? And that, on some level, that's like, it was cool, but that's some time I can't get back.
Oh yeah.
And the other thing, I think, just the time spent, you know what I mean? Like, you probably heard me say it a lot about how this isn't my, I enjoy the ride, but I'm not like centered in coffee. And so every minute that I give to this, even to be here at this, to do this podcast, it's like, hey, there's something I'm not doing, right? There's that core dream or whatever it is that I may have that I'm not tending to, because it's like, I could split my attention one more time, but if I do that, then there's going to be a cost to this thing that's already, we talked about age, and I think one of the things that comes with getting into your 30s or whatever age you are, the more responsibility you have, there's sort of this grieving that has to happen that says you don't have all the time in the world.
Yeah.
Like, there is a limit to what you do.
Or the energy.
Right?
Yeah.
And so there have been those sacrifices as well.
Yeah, the marriage thing is real, bro. Like, we all got married super young, coincidentally or not coincidentally. I don't know. But, yeah, I mean, like, I got married, I think it was at the end of 2016, and that was, like, our first event was my wedding. Like, the first time
he
we
didn't
like,
work it.
Yeah, I didn't
wow.
work it.
Shout out Scott
that would've
Ulrich.
really sucked. Yeah, we stole somebody from Chrome to work the event, but
Nice.
because they were in the wedding. But yeah, those are years I can't get back. And you work enough 70-hour weeks, and my wife, I think we talked about this on the last show too. We did like a Q&A about how like setting that expectation with your significant other that like, hey, this is just a season, like it with a beginning and an end, hopefully, but that really cushioned the blow. It didn't, like I said, there was time that repair needed to happen, but having that season with a start and end of like, hey, this is going to be a grind season to get this off the ground.
Yeah.
And the reason I asked that question is there's a lot of people listening that are trying to start businesses. And, it's as fun as it is, they also need to like count the cost of what it takes to do it, especially if you don't have a ton of money.
Yeah, and like again, going back to expectations, it's like, yeah, like what are your familial expectations? What are your, like financially, what are the expectations you have? All those things need to be like reviewed and analyzed and talked about. And I think the seasonality thing you said is really important too, of being like, now I work a much more regimented schedule.
Yeah.
And it's like, well, if I need to break that schedule, it's either typically because something wasn't delegated properly, or there's like a genuine emergency, which is
something's really wrong.
Yeah, which is like part of life. But building that boundary is so important. So,
And I think for listeners, like there are certain things, there's this adage like, right, that says like money isn't everything, right? But when people hear that, they say, yeah, but that's what people with no money say, right? Like if we're honest, right? So people can talk about like the pain of entrepreneurship. Hey man, don't do this, learn from me. And the average, especially if you're an entrepreneur, you're gonna say, no, I'm. But I think maybe one way to maybe help get past that is just kind of like listening to the stories and just ask yourself, like, do you want to be Aaron? Okay, well, take the wisdom of what he said. You know what I'm saying? Do you not like something that you heard from Marcus? Like, cool. Well, don't be me, right? Like, go. If you like, how could you on your paternity leave do something like that? Great. Yes. How could I? You don't be me. You learn from
Take
that
note.
lesson. Like, take from it what you need, right, to go get started. Because there's no perfect way. Like, you got to go mess up. That's the whole part of it.
Gotta
right?
go pay the price.
You got to go pay the price. It's not, it's not free.
Yeah.
I remember since we quit school to start Valor. A year or two in, all of our like high school people we knew started to graduate college and get jobs where they were making money.
Yeah.
And I remember being like, I get it now. Like they have Saturday and Sunday off and PTO, and I'm
and $70K.
I'm behind the cart and I like really have to poop, but I'm the only person working. So
And I think it's a good lens, right, to look at life. I remember I was 17, I almost enlisted in the military, and I remember for some reason I was looking at the lifestyle of the recruiter. And something in me was like, I don't want to be that guy. I don't want to be like him. Right? And that's all I needed to not enlist in the military. And I'm not saying there's anything bad with that life. I'm not saying there's anything, know. But for me, it was like, I don't want that. And I think, in these types of conversations, it could get like real prescriptive real fast. And it's like, nah, just like peep the room. Like who's got your vibe? Like who do you on some level resonate with? Like, okay, go in that direction.
Yeah,
what I'm
take
saying?
that path.
Take that path.
One thing I was going to ask was, how do you guys come together as like founders? Do you have any sort of rhythms that you like to partake in together that kind of keep the unity and like the fellowship of the company strong? For example, I don't think we're going to do it this year, which is kind of a bummer, but usually we take a yearly like weekend or like weekday 3 or 4 day trip together, and it's just like half fun, half like vision casting for the company, and I feel like that's always a really unifying bonding time, and that's been super helpful for us. But do you guys have anything like that?
Honestly, well, there's always excuses, but I think I think we've gone back to back on kids the last 2 years.
Yeah.
One of us has always had like a newborn or been on leave or something like that. This is like the first time, I guess, since Portrait started where we have more flexibility or our schedules are lining up. So we haven't been very good at those rituals or rhythms, but that's definitely something to grow into as we walk into 2023.
That will be interesting for us.
Well, we're not doing it this year, so
Yeah,
makes sense.
we got newborn, soon to be newborn. So
Yeah.
We've like, or well, this year a lot of us went to SCA this year, and like that was a
cool.
pretty sick team bonding
Yeah.
thing because we were, I mean, obviously we were engaged and did meetings and met people and stuff, but a lot of it was just like, hey, we're all going to lunch, let's hang out, let's talk, let's get to know each other. So that was pretty fun. And what was Coffee Fest this year? Did that happen this year in Atlanta? Am I making that up?
who's to say?
We're not really good at that stuff.
Yeah. I think it was. I think I went. So yeah. So
Yeah, and it probably, I think that's probably just another reflection of us having some founders inside and some outside. I think at this point, as someone who's a little outside the business, I'm like, it's more important for the core team that's doing it every day to do stuff like that, right? Because any decision to spend time is a decision to not spend time, and it's probably more as a founders club or circle, we've kind of done our part, like, right? It's and on some level, it's not about us anymore. It's about the folks who are down in the roastery every day. Like, sure, we got things we need to talk about, and we can do that. But those types of moments are probably at this season, right? Would you say?
yeah, I mean, well, now that I'm thinking about the question more, it's like we do a pretty good job of celebration, but that's just as a team. So we just celebrated Marcus's birthday,
Nice.
and we had all hands call, and then we went out for pizza and beer and cake and all that. But it was like more of a team orientated thing than necessarily like in a founders or exclusive conversation. We honestly we're really trying to build like a culture of transparency. So like a lot of things that we might talk about as founders, we're talking about as a team, like the transparency behind our numbers.
That's awesome.
And like, what's our target for all of these numbers, and like how are we thinking about the future? So I think that just by sharing all that information, it builds trust and makes those higher level conversations really just like a normal conversation. So,
True.
yeah.
Yeah, and if you got any goal oriented people on your staff, it kind of drives them forward
Exactly.
towards those things.
Or skeptics.
Yeah.
Or the other.
Yeah.
Well, guys, we appreciate your time with us here.
Yeah.
For real.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Thanks
this
so
is dope.
much.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Everyone who's listening, go and buy some Portrait coffee.
Oh yeah.
It's real easy to do. Portrait.coffee is the website. What's your Instagram handle?
Portrait Coffee.
Portrait Coffee.
No dot. Respect.
Nah.
Thanks, y'all.
It really was such a great time, like getting to know you guys. I know we've kind of been acquaintances, but I really hope this is, start of a friendship in the coffee community. So thank you.
Yeah, this was super generative. Appreciate it.
All right,
Lovely.
thanks, guys.
All right.
Love you.